Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and it's been less than 4 months this time. New Year's resolution on track. For now. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone that watched and commented on the last video. You guys gave me a lot to think about. I had people from both the PvE and the PvP side chime in with some very valid criticisms of the game. Now, if you're one of my regular viewers, you'll know that I tend to bounce around a lot because I have a wide array of interests. So this probably won't become a full Arc Raiders channel, but I got so many comments on the last video from PvE players explaining some of their issues with the game that I wanted to touch on it at least one more time because I think there was one significant thing that I didn't mention in that last one. First though, let's get one thing out of the way. Some of the comments were literally just people whining about dying. And while I understand the frustration of getting killed by rats if you hit an unlucky streak, dying is a part of the game. So much so that it's included in the tutorial. Honestly, I get the feeling that some of you would be complaining even if the death was just to a dangerous Arc enemy. PvP just happens to be your current scapegoat. Like I said though, I get it. We're all salty from time to time. But if every PvP related death causes you to tweak out and rush to Reddit for an online therapy session, again, this game probably just isn't for you. Now with that said, I actually want to use this video to talk to my more middle ground and PvP raiders that don't understand why these PvE exclusive players exist in the first place. For the record, I still maintain that the current vision of Embark for this game includes the tension derived from PvP. But there seems to be some friction around what this actually means for the game. In a recently released interview, the Embark CEO stated that this game isn't about shooting players. His exact words, "You can do that if you want to, but the ethos of this game has never been to go in and shoot players." Some members of the Arc Raiders community have taken to online forums to parrot these words anytime someone brings up PvP as a way of shaming those who would dare to shoot someone else. But once again, I think that these players are missing the point. An ethos is a guiding principle. So when Patrick Sutherland says that shooting other players is not the ethos of the game, what he means is that shooting other players is not the guiding principle behind decision making for Arc Raiders. This is why the game is made in third person, why your character's movements are so sluggish, why the weapon stats and bonus abilities primarily only impact damage done to Arc, and why, at least in part, the free kits in this game don't strip you of a weapon and make you defenseless, because the game and its balancing are primarily designed with PvE battles in mind. Taking away weapons from free kits would make griefing other players less of an issue, sure, but it would also make dealing with flying Arc and pops basically impossible. Now personally, I think this design philosophy has led to some, let's call them flawed outcomes, like the prevalence of the trigger nades, which have been nerfed, the initial overtuning of the Stitcher and Kettle, the Kettle also recently nerfed, and high rarity weapons that shred Arc but do so little in PvP for their cost that it feels like a mistake to use them. But this video isn't about that. I am supposed to be defending PvE after all. To that end, one of the most common questions levied at PvE only players is, why would you play a game with PvP if you don't enjoy PvP? And while I completely agree that it's a bit odd to purchase a game that tells you up front what you're getting and then complain about what you've gotten, I do think there is something that the PvPers are missing about this game. When most people hear defensive PvE only lobbies, I think they imagine a bunch of players running around opening drawers and baskets, collecting fruit and searching for blueprints. And true, there are definitely some players that just want to drop in, turn off their brain, and extract with no regard for their safety. Some of these are the players I addressed at the beginning of the video. If you run around not checking corners and blindly trusting every raider you run into, then you're kind of just asking for bad things to happen. But there is a legitimate reason why some more rational players are asking for PvE only lobbies that I do feel like is being overlooked. And that reason is simple. The PvE in Arc Raiders is good, arguably even great. One of my favorite games of the past decade is Monster Hunter World. For those unfamiliar with the game, you drop into a biome with a monster as your target and try to kill it, as well as any smaller creatures you run into along the way, all the while collecting resources that you can bring into future hunts. Now to some of you, that may sound boring, but what makes Monster Hunter a great series that has lasted for years, mind you, is that each of the monsters you hunt has a unique behavior and weakness that you need to learn in order to take them down. With each hunt, you are learning more about your enemies, and eventually you master it to the point that you can take down what was once a powerful adversary without even taking damage. Meanwhile, the progression system turns every hunted monster into resources that make you stronger. This makes Monster Hunter a game where progression isn't just a number you see going up on the screen, but also a collection of experiences that make you a better player over time. You can have a very similar experience playing games like Elden Ring or even Slay the Spire, the card game I mentioned in my last video. But I had never experienced this feeling in a shooting game until Arc Raiders. Every enemy in this game has unique strengths and weaknesses and behaviors that determine where you should shoot them, how you should engage, and what kinds of tools you might want to bring to that fight. They also have behaviors intended to make the encounters a bit more challenging. For example, ticks will often not attack you until you have let your guard down. And you'll find that hornets who are weak in their rear propellers will often tilt forward to prevent from exposing themselves. Now, I have heard some people complain that the arc enemies are too easy to deal with, and I've also heard complaints that the PvP aspect of the game is harmed by the fact that you can easily avoid arc. And while I will agree that there are a plethora of ways to trivialize arc encounters, none of this detracts from the enjoyment of using a gun, grenades, and your wit to take down the larger enemies. And the type of player who values this kind of experience doesn't care that there are easier ways to play, because their entire motivation is to challenge themselves, not to play optimally. Just because you could trivialize Elden Ring encounters by using summons doesn't mean that there weren't hordes of players avoiding the mechanic to give themselves a bigger challenge. There will always be intrinsically motivated players that simply enjoy pushing a system and themselves to their limits. This is why you see things like the naked challenges where you go in with literally nothing, or the rags to riches runs where someone uses just a hairpin. I want to make it clear that not all of these players are PvE exclusive, but a significant portion of them are. And the reason why is because the PvE elements of this game are very well made. There's something so satisfying about the fact that when you play this game for the first time, you run into enemies that are a mystery to you, but as you learn to watch them and understand their behaviors, all of a sudden they become these interesting challenges that you can choose to take on at will and overcome consistently. The difference in how you would approach a leaper the first time you fight it versus the 5th time you fight it in this game is not something to sneeze at. That learning curve is something that many players find very satisfying. And I haven't even talked about the fact that every weapon in this game, including things like the Berletta, which people continue to dunk on, has its own feel and identity that allows players to express themselves through weapon choice. Or the fact that the blueprints in this game provide casual players with something to keep chasing even after they've accomplished other goals. And then there's the crafting and stash systems in this game. While recrafting your loadout may be annoying to some, the system allows players that enjoy tinkering to spend minutes and sometimes even hours on end collecting, crafting, and organizing their items. I'm sure maybe I'm in the minority on this one, but I personally find it relaxing to hop on every so often to clean up my inventory and craft a bunch of items that I might need later. And I think Embark was aware that players like me exist because all the menu elements have an almost ASMR level of satisfying sound design. There are so many elements of Arc Raiders that feel tailor-made to appeal to the RPG or casual gamer. And the reason why makes sense if you stop to think for even 2 seconds. Embark originally intended for this to be a PvE only game, and they were building that game for years. So despite what the game has become, those original design principles are still a strong part of the game's identity. And a good portion of the player base have fallen in love with these elements, both from playing the game and from watching content. I guarantee you that there are tons of players that watch something like Smith Doggy's video where he armed an entire lobby against the matriarch and led the charge and said, "That's the game that I want to play." It's important to realize that the extraction shooter is a pretty niche genre. So for a game like Arc Raiders to have such a large audience, it must be pulling players from a ton of other places. And those players have largely stuck around because the game is meeting their needs, in no small part due to Embark's implementation of aggression-based matchmaking. One thing that I constantly see parroted that I do think is wrong is that these players will eventually get bored and that they would grow to hate the game if there was no PvP available. And while I do agree that players like myself might find the game less appealing without the threat of PvP, I think some of the online community is vastly underestimating how many people just want to hop on a game, shoot some enemies, and unwind. Cozy games and RPGs have been massively successful over the past few years simply because when life is difficult, and for many of us life can be very difficult, sometimes you just want to find some place that doesn't suck. And a good number of people have found that place topside in Arc Raiders. But off my soapbox, I can hear the comments already. Then those idiots shouldn't be playing an extraction shooter in the first place. And I mostly agree with you. I still stand on pretty much everything I said in that last video, but I'm not quite sure Embark agrees. For starters, having more players is better for them overall, but also they've made it abundantly clear that even though they strongly value PvP, they have no intentions of making this a truly competitive game. They will rein in things that become oppressive or unbalanced, but I don't think there will ever be leaderboards or changes to some of the mechanics that are in place to add friction to combat encounters, because PvP for Embark is a tool to add tension, not the sole purpose of this game. This very philosophy is the reason why aggression-based matchmaking was added in the first place, because they want players to jump into Arc Raiders and be able to play the way they enjoy. That said, I'm still not in full agreement that this game needs a full-on PvE mode, as that would alienate players like myself that are primarily interested in this game for the uncertainty of lobbies. But I'd hate to end a video without at least attempting a solution for the problem I've presented. So here's the solution I would offer as a hot take. What if there was a PvE lobby, but with some limitations? The biggest issue I have with a PvE mode outside of just the lack of tension is that it could serve to harm the game's economy and longevity if you could just go in and guarantee loot gains every raid. So what if there was a PvE mode, but it only gave you access to the standard maps? That way you could go in to have a relaxing raid if you wanted to, basically the same way you can right now, but you wouldn't be able to guarantee safety in maps with special conditions like the night raid or the locked gate. Nothing would change about ABMM, so your special raids would most likely not feel that different, but there would still be the intended tension in places where it matters. This solution would also benefit PvP players in the event that they go on a massive losing streak, because they can earn their way back up in materials without needing to do the awkward 5 no-shot games to get into a peaceful lobby and then shooting those harmless players to get back into aggressive lobbies. Again, this is probably a major hot take, but I think this is the only way a PvE mode could ever truly work in Arc Raiders. But I'm sure some of you probably think I'm crazy for even suggesting this, so let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I do read every comment, even if I don't always have the time to respond to everything, so if you have something to say, be sure to speak up. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want more, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.